Hi guys, welcome to another Leadfeeder webinar. This week we're going to be discussing the future of sales and is it impossible to sell right now? Just a quick agenda in terms of what we'll be going through today. For anybody that's been in our webinars over the past couple of weeks, we're going to be going through some actionable insights from our industry leaders who I'll present to you now in a moment. Each leader is going to give us around 5 different points in which you can go away with today and start implementing immediately. So it's no fluff really. It's stuff that you can really take away and start working on yourselves. After that, we'll follow into a panel discussion. So we have a list of questions which we'll go through around the future of the sales role and how we see things fitting in right now. Then afterwards, we'll go to a Q&A just regarding questions and so on. If you have any questions, please put them into the questions tab, which you'll see on the right-hand side of your window there. We will try to answer all questions during the Q&A round. But please remember to put it into the questions tab, and there you will be able to upvote different questions as well. So I'd just like to introduce everybody real quick before we get started. So first of all, I'm Andy Culligan, I'm the CMO at Leadfeeder. So our first speaker that we'll be speaking with today is Nikki Ivey, who's the founder of SDRDefenders. I came across SDRDefenders a little while ago, and honestly, having been an SDR myself, and I've also managed SDRs, I'm really happy to see more organizations start to open up and really look to help the role of the SDR. I think it's probably one of the hardest positions that anybody can do, being in such a junior position and with quite a lot of weight on your shoulders to be able to build pipeline. So SDRs being junior development representatives, telesales, BDRs, business development representatives, whatever you call it. It's quite a difficult job. There's quite a lot of cold calling involved and quite a lot of rejection in that as well. So it's a hard one to really, build pipeline and then try to learn at the same time. On that, we also have James Ski, who's the CEO of Sales Confidence. Also very similar to SDRDefenders in that they're building like a worldwide community of sales and SDRs that are able to support one another. So it's looking to really coach and train people in terms of how to get to the next level in their sales career. And then also look to help people navigate that landscape of rejection and so on, making sure that they're staying mentally healthy during these times, and making sure that they're able to progress in their careers. Then at the coalface, let's call it, we have Amy Quick, who's business development executive at IntelliMagic, she focuses on enterprise sales. And I'm really interested to hear what she's going to say about what she's seeing in the market at the moment as a salesperson herself. What type of trends she's seeing, what are the things that are working, how is she breaking down doors in order to get through to people at the moment. As well as that, Amy is also a social media influencer. She's very, very active on LinkedIn. Any of her posts you'll see get great uptake. So please go and follow her afterwards. But like that, we'll start with Nikki. So Nikki, I'll leave it over to you.
Hello. Like the nice gentleman with the lovely accent said, I am in fact Nikki Ivey, co-founder and head of content at SDRDefenders. And our mission is to transform the way people and organizations perceive and invest in SDRs. But to the question that brought us all here, is it impossible to sell right now? I think part of it, yes, depends on what you sell. But generally speaking, no, it's not impossible. It's time to pop back into prospecting. I'm a huge fan of pop music. It finds its way into every facet of my life. So sales is no exception. And that's what we're looking at here. The image you see on the screen, the phrase there is talking about this idea of understanding before you go into prospecting in an unconventional time with an unconventional approach. You kind of just have to accept that there's going to be haters. There's going to be people on either side who don't buy into what you're doing, who don't get it. And you just have to, you got to let that go. And so that's what that first line, that Ariana Grande line is she has this lyric. It's not Shakespeare, people, but she has this lyric that goes, unfollow fear and just say you are blocked. And when I started to think about, creating content to drive sales and build relationships in this time, that was the first step I had to take, was just to decide to not be held back by fear of what folks might say, fear of whether or not it was going to work. And so I keep that with me. The next concept, this connect with the camera. If you think about, it says Britney Spears there, if you think about her early work, those masterpieces, if you will, if you think about her early work, Britney she'd find places to look into the camera and make this quick connection. And guys, I think she was on to something. I think that through video, there is this possibility for it to be the catalyst to having meaningful conversations. And that's what we need right now to make it possible to sell in this climate. And then once you've done that, that's when you get to Beyonce. That's when you get to this level of confidence, right, that you've built because you've overcome the fear. You're making these connections, and now you're ready to run the world. You can go ahead and hit for the next slide. And the way that I'm doing that, one of the ways I'm doing that is with this app called Ripple. No, I don't work for them, but I decided, look, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna be the Rihanna of Ripple. And the reason why I mention Rihanna here is that she kind of has this attitude of, I'm gonna create this thing and people are going to love it. She doesn't worry about, how it's going to be perceived. She just has this self-assuredness. And certainly when you're creating video content for prospecting, that's the step that you have to take, right? And it's working, right? She's got loyal fans who buy what she's selling, and that's the dream. That's what we all want. So what you're looking at here on your screen it looks like a meme, but it's actually a quick video animation that I made. And I posted it to my story. And then John Barrow shared it to his story. And then I did the same thing for Scott Barker, and he shared it to his story. So these are folks who I followed on Instagram for a few months now, and crickets. But I created this little video and sent it out to them, and this is what happened. And then there's one where I tweeted this out. Scott Lee saw it, and it's a little small on the screen there, but he was like, this is so cool. Thank you. And the point of this is I'm making that connection. I'm reaching in and grabbing people in a way that stands out from what they're used to seeing. And then, of course, there's Rihanna because it's Rihanna. But the quick thing to take away from this slide here is these are super easy to make. It took me about 5 minutes. You're not going to spend much more time personalizing these as far as finding what quote to include than you would if you were going to personalize a LinkedIn invitation or an email. But this is just much more impactful. So you're getting more mileage out of the work that you're doing. And it's got a mobile function as well. Again, I don't work for them. I'm just saying these are the things that have worked for me in setting meetings lately. And the next thing that's been working for me is I was like, I'm going to be the Drake of Drift, right? So what we know about Drake is the man he churns out, he's prolific. He churns out hits, right? Just on a seemingly steady stream. And when I discovered this Drift integration, I know a lot of you probably are using Drift video in your sequences and in your outreach now. But what the integration with LinkedIn did was answer this question: how much more productive could I be if I did not have to leave this platform or my laptop to create personalized video content? So I started to do that. And here was my result. If you want to go ahead and click there for me. So I video prospected Colin Cadmus, and through the Drift video extension, and he got directly back to me. And my favorite part, he says here, you accomplished making me smile, building a memorable connection, and bringing awareness to your company. I love it. And isn't that the goal, right? Isn't that the dream? If I'm an SDR and I'm wanting to break through the noise, those are the things I want to do. I want to make them smile. I want to draw attention to my company and what I'm selling. And then he also notes there that I did not ask for anything on that initial outreach. And that's what's been working. So I booked this meeting, and you can go on to the next one. And then the last thing I decided was like, look, I'm going to be the Lizzo of Loom. I had conquered, how to get folks' attention to try and warm up the calls I was going to be making to set appointments with social using Ripple. And then I had done it with my first degree connections using the Drift integration. But what about those people who you're not a first degree connection with? How can I get video in front of those people? And so I started to look at apps that generate a link. I was so mad at myself for not thinking of it sooner, but I started looking at apps that generate a link. And that is what Loom does. So the same steps, again, you're not spending any more time on it. The same steps that I would take to personalize any piece of outreach. I'm doing that with this. and using that as a couple lines of copy in a personalized LinkedIn invitation request, and then just dropping the link to this video in there. And then it doesn't just go into the abyss, because Loom then gives you the ability on the back end to track views of that content. So you'll at least know if they saw your video, if you don't get a direct, like a right away, them accepting your request. But it was just a way for me to feel like I was taking control of how I was getting in front of people. And then the result you'll see there, this gentleman, Pete, actually is on the executive team at Loom. And I was trying to get a meeting with him, and he responded within minutes and dropped his Calendly link. So it got results. I was able to set the meeting, and I am on a mission now to put that in the hands of every salesperson who is feeling like it's impossible to sell right now. Because the truth is, it's not impossible. It's imperative that we do. We've just got to take these, unconventional approaches. We've got to unfollow fear. We've got to connect with the camera, and we've got to make this about relationships. Think about who you want to help. What's the best way to get in front of them so you can help the most people, and internalize this idea that relationships are revenue. And that's how we make it possible to sell in these times. Absolutely.
So thank you so much for that, Nikki. And thanks for bringing us through all those different pieces of tech there, which are quite interesting in how you've used them. I quite like the Lizzo of Loom, by the way. I think that's got a good ring to it. But and also I've never quite thought of Britney Spears as producing masterpieces, but I'll buy it. I'll buy it if you're selling it. But no, thank you so much for that. It was really interesting. So to come up next, we have our next speaker, and I'm going to hand it over to Amy.
All right. Yep. Well, you got my name. So the first tip that I had that I wanted to share is the fact that right now we're in a situation where there are far more sharks and sales reps in the sea than there are fish to eat. A lot of the SMB market got hit really, really hard. For a while, most of us would have been prospecting on the lower end of that spectrum, probably to more startups and small businesses. And those guys are really struggling right now. I mean, they probably laid off at least all of their employees, if not most of them, in a lot of situations. So we have to kind of restructure how we're going to sell to the people that are left with budget and the ability to actually buy right now. So one of the things that I really feel is strong for us, especially SDRs and organizations that are trying to get in front of all of the fish that are left in the sea, is to blend the human emotional side of sales, that really relational, like Nikki mentioned, the building those relationships. And also using the tools out there. So Nikki just showed some really awesome tools. I want to talk about like the tech sales stack as well. So one of my good friends, Justin Michael, he just is releasing this book called TQ with Tony J. Hughes. And they talk about how important it's going to be to automate a lot of our outbound prospecting, but also keeping it as hyper-personalized as we can make it, right? Using the brain and the emotions that we have as a human and putting that into some automation. I mean, not all of it can be automated, and that's almost impossible really to fully automate, because we still have to have human conversations and make those connections. But there is a high degree of automation that could be honed in on in a lot of our organizations in order to improve the efficiency at which we sell, and to give us the time we need to dig into hyper-personalization. So going on, 50 LinkedIn profiles and scouring social media and trying to figure out what the intrinsic emotional driving factors are for a lot of these people that are in these purchasing positions, that takes time. It could take a couple minutes per person if you think about it. So if you can kick off and automate some of your other processes and not have to worry about sending 20 manual emails and not having some sort of cadence in place, then you can focus more on the personalization. Case in point, I had one guy who all I could find was a picture on social media of a 1977 Pontiac Firebird, sitting in his driveway. And I thought, this guy's a Smokey and the Bandits fan. It was the only public picture he had on his Facebook profile, right? So I got super stalkerish on this guy. But it hit me because I was like, okay, he's a classic car fan. He obviously loves this car. It's the only public photo he has. So I ended up sending him a little toy 1977 die-cast car model in his Christmas package. And he was blown away that I would take the time to not only just figure out like what sports team he liked, right? But to figure out like, this is something that this guy loves. And I'm trying to tell him, hey, look, I value you enough as a customer and as, you know, in developing this relationship, that I'm going to give you something that is meaningful to you, that you can have forever. And every time you look at it, you're going to remember that crazy sales girl that sent you this little toy car. So blending the automation and all of the outreach and everything that we have now, connect and sells, things of that nature, with how we sell in a relational manner is going to be huge moving forward through this year. So if you're a sales organization, don't decline those calls from those vendors, because a lot of them will defer payments. They'll give you long POCs. Like, you know, instead of doing like a 2-week POC or a 30-day POC, some of them are doing like 60 to 90-day POCs. So take this time to plug holes in your sales process. And if that means adding some automation or tools, do it. And definitely recommend checking out the book TQ, because it's kind of mind-blowing. My second tip would be, don't overplay the empathy card. Okay. Empathy went so hard and heavy right out the gate when COVID-19 hit, and everyone was doing it. And people are sick and tired of it. My customers don't need my empathy. I mean, and that sounds really brutal, but it's true. The guys I'm selling to are fine. They're keeping the infrastructure of all of the data centers up and running. They're busier than ever. They're happy to be busy. It means they're not getting laid off. So I don't need empathy with them. I need to figure out how to get on their schedule, because they're so damn busy that they can't give me the time. So empathy works if you're selling to an industry vertical or an organization that has felt some pain from COVID-19. Prime example of that, I have a travel company that I would not have thought would have even been on the radar to look at a solution right now. They just did layoffs. The main difference was they laid off in an area that now they're feeling the strain, and they need to bring in software to replace the bodies they lost. Software is cheaper in that situation. So they are shopping. And I was like, holy hell, I can't believe they're in a situation where we're actually talking to them about doing a 2020 deal. But the fact of the matter is, I empathize with the situation the guy now found himself in, wearing 4 hats, all these people laid off on his team, and now a deal is moving. So don't overplay the empathy card. Use it where you need it, but when you don't need it, don't use it. And that would, you want to pop up that next slide? Oh. All right, so this is a good one. And this is what kind of the space that I sell in a lot at the executive level. So don't beat around the bush unless you're selling landscaping, especially right now that a lot more people are looking at enterprise level deals. Maybe they were selling in more of the SMB space now, and now they're saying, well, you know what? Who's got budget? Who's got the budget to buy solutions right now? And a lot of them are those top, you know, Fortune 5,000, Fortune 500 and above companies. And executives, they can smell a sales rep a mile away. And I met Lisa Palmer, who was just recently on the Brutal Truth podcast. And I was listening to that and my mind was just blown, because Lisa is a former CIO and CMO. All right. She has been there, done that. She has been in front of countless sales reps. She told this story about she had one in front of her and he lasted about 7 minutes before she kicked him out of the office. She really explained how important it is to reframe how we sell at the executive level, because in almost every situation, whether you're selling to a small business or an enterprise level business, you're probably going to start out potentially with your technical champions, or, you know, that the person that's in the weeds that you know you can immediately alleviate their pain if they buy your product or solution or whatever that may be. But they have to run it up the chain of command. And if you're a good sales rep, you're going to do that legwork for them and with them. And that means getting that executive to give you the time of day. All right. and selling effectively and efficiently to them, because they don't care about the minutia. They don't care about those little technical details or, all of the value props and all of that. They care about what you can do to help them in their job as an executive. And so Lisa gave a really good quote. She said, executives need you to shorten time to value. They don't have the luxury of time for you to build your point. Give them the crescendo at the front of your message. Give them that, this is what we're going to do for you right up front. Follow it with supporting details, not the other way around. Get this wrong and you'll never get their attention. And she's brutally accurate on this. I got one executive who I couldn't get through for 6 months of just traditional prospecting. I sent him a Dilbert's comic strip email. He was like, that was awesome. Way to, get on my radar. Yes, we need to talk. And then on a 15-minute phone call, I moved them. This is a Fortune 10 company. I moved them forward. Now we're going to do a 2020 deal. 15-minute phone call. Okay. And that's because I got straight to the point. Hey, we're going to save you money. You guys have this initiative going on. We can help with that. We can actually do far above and beyond what you're currently doing there. And that's going to save you money and time. And that's all that guy cared about. Right. So huge to get to, just when you're selling, just put yourself in that person's shoes. And an executive has 300 emails from sales reps in their folder at any given time or more. They don't care what the value is. A lot of times they just want to know what you can do to help them in their position, because ultimately they've got an axe to grind. They're trying to get somewhere in life too, and they're probably trying to shift up in position, or as Lisa points out, they're eventually going to jump ship and try to up their C-level role and get like a CEO role at another company or something to those effects. So you're also trying to help them with their career too. So keep that in mind when you're selling at the executive level, and you can bump it. And these are my last points, and these are my fun ones. Like Nikki said, I was a non-believer in social selling about 6 months ago. I was like, it's a waste of time. It doesn't work. It's just it's vanity metrics, and and man, I was wrong. So it was hugely important, because all of these prospects and decision makers, especially at the executive level, are silent watchers, right? They're not engaging in content a lot of times. They might like your stuff occasionally, but when you go and look at your views and you can see all the companies viewing you, I automatically think, okay, is there an executive looking at this content right now? Are they seeing what I'm seeing? And what's their perception on it? And I was prospecting traditionally cold calls, warm calls, email, some video messaging for 6 months straight into 3 different accounts, and nothing, just crickets. Finally, they accepted my connection requests. They went on my profile, viewed my profile, were obviously viewing some of my content. Next thing you know, boom, 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 booked those meetings, got on calls with them, and 2 of those are solid deals for 2020. One of them is the largest deal we have in our pipeline for 2020. And it came because the final layer was the social aspect of it, right? They got to know me a little bit, and that gave them some measure of confidence. And okay, let's have a conversation with this girl. Maybe she knows what she's talking about. Either way, it'll probably be a fun conversation, So, I'm going to point out some people that I think are just crushing it right now at this. One is Jeremiah, the financing Viking. Okay, this guy did a video where he's out in the woods slaying. He's just like slaying things, randomly hitting things. And he's talking about how, at the same time, how he can help his customers save money and clear out like their online carts and transactions. And I don't even know exactly what he does, but it was hilarious. And I never forgot him. I was like, yeah, that was hysterical. And he's always he does a lot of like Dale Dupree's sales rebel stuff with the letters and the crumpled letters and things like that. And it just cracks me up. And I'm like, gosh, if I saw someone that put that much effort into a prospecting attempt, or just a, hey, like, get to know me, I have absolute respect for that. I mean, he really put himself out there and dressed up like a freaking Viking, You know, if that doesn't get someone's attention, I don't know what will. And then my buddy, Stephen Chase, he got an email from a prospect that told him that or one of his coworkers did, that said they were a sales weasel. It was just a cold outbound email. And he was just like, you know what? I'm going to embrace it. I mean, we are kind of sales weasels, aren't we? Like, we're all trying to weasel our way in somehow. So instead of being off put by it, he owned it. And now he's actually dubbed himself the sales weasel. And it's hilarious. And he's getting responses on emails. People are sending him connection requests from out of nowhere. They want to talk to him. So it's working. Tabitha Kavanaugh, she's another great one. She's always posting some crazy stuff. She's doing the interesting fonts. And I mean, here she's like singing a song. It's awesome. And then Matthew Wells, he does basic dad stuff every Wednesday, right? No relation to his business life or sales or anything. It's just basic dad stuff. And he stole that from Basic Dude Stuff. So if you guys haven't ever seen that, go on his post and check it out. But he got permission to do an offshoot of Basic Dude Stuff and turn it into Basic Dad Stuff. And it's phenomenal because now you get to see who he is as a person, as a dad. You get to know his character. And as a customer, you think, would I do business with that guy? And I guarantee you most of them will be like, absolutely. He seems like a really solid dude. And those videos are hilarious. And I bet the conversations that come from it would be, phenomenal. So I'd encourage everyone to not be afraid to be themselves on social media, right? Because in the long run, your customers are seeing that and they're going to identify that. And then the humor side of it too, right now, people are struggling. I mean, there's no denying that. There's people that have been laid off left and right. Companies are struggling. I mean, James, we kind of had a conversation about that before the webinar started. But you can still use humor and almost like self-deprecating humor. You can make people smile, and that will help you in your business connections. So that would be my top tips: is just go out there and don't be afraid to get busy and to break the mold a little bit.
That's excellent advice, Amy, by the way. I really enjoyed that. Like there's one thing that you said there as well early on about the direct mail piece that you did with that car. That's something that's awesome, because I'm a big advocate of direct mail. I think for a long time people just forgot about it and thought, email's the right way of pushing forward and so on. I think now direct mail is making a big comeback, but like you need to be super personal, or you need to have like a super like in-depth campaign, a well thought out campaign if you're doing it on a broader basis. Like that one example of like finding something on social media, being able to personalize that and then send it out direct mail, like that's lasting with a prospect. That's
right.
That's the difference between winning and losing a deal. And it again goes to like to your last point, like you buy from people. People buy from people. Like, yes, of course, the product that you're selling needs to solve a problem. But at the end of the day, the products, unless you're in a very, very niche industry, there's going to be a number of different competitors all offering very similar offerings, right? There may be some dissimilarities in terms of pricing, whatever. But at the end of the day, the salesperson, the person that I'm making a connection with, the person that's trying to sell to me, if I don't have any personal connection with that person, I'm less likely to buy from them. It's a human thing,
It really is. Yeah, I agree.
So thanks, Amy. That leaves us with James. So James, I'll leave it over to you, mate.
Thank you. Thank you guys for kicking off. So just to I'm going to give you a bit of a background on my sales career, share with you an overview of the vision and mission for the company Sales Confidence, and then just cover these 5 areas which I believe you can use and leverage to understand yourself to be successful in these challenging times for everybody. It's very clear. I've seen people pop up in India, in Amsterdam, in France, in the USA. Every person on this planet has been impacted by COVID-19 in some way or some form, and the economy's been impacted. But I'm a proud sales professional at heart, and I believe that sales is going to build us and take us out of this difficulty. We need more people to buy, and therefore we need more of us to be selling successfully. So that's a kind of positive premise. In terms of my background, I've had 10 years in the SaaS sales industry. I've done every role from SDR individual contributor, sales manager, sales VP, and now I'm a CEO building a global company. While at one of my major roles, I spent 3.5 years actually working at LinkedIn. And while at LinkedIn, I was #1 on LinkedIn at LinkedIn globally. So I was the #1 influencer on LinkedIn. I had a 97 out of 100 social selling index. And I maintained that for over a year. So when it comes to social selling, I totally understand it. And I was an actual LinkedIner. But to be fair, I love the phone more. You will never, ever say or hear me say anything different than the phone still drives the business. Everything else it's been talked about is about adding value to that conversation and using different approaches to gain attention. But right now, more than ever, conversations drive business. So as a company, Sales Confidence, we're building the world's most valuable B2B community, and we basically offer you a membership. But today I want to share with you things that you can think about from a mindset perspective. We talk a lot about your performance. So targets have been adjusted right now. People having to deal a lot with a reduction in targets. And how do you handle that if your gold standard is to overachieve, yet your target's been reduced and the chances of hitting it might be lower? But to answer the question, is it impossible to sell right now? Right now, no, absolutely not. Sales are happening everywhere. Even in those industries that are being destroyed by this, there is some element of selling going on. You have to identify the right ICP, the right target, and the right person at the right time to buy. But selling is absolutely happening. So I want you to consider a few things in your mind during this conversation that I hope you can take away to help you weather these challenging times. So #1, I'm going to talk about your why. Why are you motivated right now? Why do you do what you do? And why are you excited about your product or solution? 2, what's the vision you have for yourself? Where do you see your career going? What's motivating you to be better, do more, work harder than your competitor? What are the specific actions you're going to take? And how do you practice patience? The challenge being a sales professional is that we're hungry to do more quickly. And we struggle sometimes practicing patience. And that's something now as a founder I'm having to do because maybe things aren't moving as fast. And then acceptance. So I'm going to go through those 5 points and then I'll summarize at the end. So #1, understanding your why. Right now, for many of you, I'm hoping on this call, you're in work, you're in a role. Great, right? There are many that are not. But if you are, congratulations. Take the opportunity now to understand why you do what you do. Why do you get up every day and set up those cadences in your sales tool? Why do you get up every day and knock on that door? Like, what is the greater why? Why does it matter to you if you book meetings for your individual contributor? Why does it matter if you close business? Why does your solution matter to the customer? Like, you really have to understand why. And this is going to motivate you to move forward and work harder. There's so many webinars right now about social media. There's so many webinars about tactics. There's so many webinars about selling during these difficult times. And we're on one. But unless you understand why, you're not going to work as hard. Many people right now have no commute. Okay, so you've maybe saved an hour, 2 hours a day because you're not commuting. What are you doing with that time? Why not make more phone calls, send more emails, send more audio notes, send more text messages, do more? Or how are you investing in yourself? You're only going to do those things if you understand your why. And it helps to write this down somewhere. The next thing is having a crystal clear vision. So what is the vision that you have for yourself? For me, I was motivated early on in my career to move up the ladder. As an SDR, I wanted to become an AE. As an AE, I wanted to become a sales manager. As a sales leader, I wanted to become a founder. So I could crystallize where I was getting and going. I talked earlier about your targets and your relationship with your target right now. The gold standard for me was always overachievement. And I've had to accept, and so is my team of SDRs and salespeople, that right now there is a survival element to what we're doing. But there shouldn't be an excuse now with what's going on. Yes, it's difficult, but if you understand why you're doing what you're doing, then it's a chance for you to move forward. Taking action. So how many of you are taking action right now, actually taking notes? Both Nikki, right, and Amy have showed some golden nuggets. I took away a few things there, specifically from Nikki on Loom. I haven't been using that tool in our business. Specifically from Amy around like good humor. Sometimes I'm forgetting right now to have a good time. Are you taking some notes? Are you going to actually action this? Are you going to revisit this? These are specific actions you could take as a result of this. But the additional actions are, once you understand why and what you're doing, how are you moving forward? How are you taking incremental steps each day to be better? Because if you're not bettering yourself and you are just sitting there in a depressive mindset that things aren't good, it's too difficult, the world's ending, then you're not going to be able to get yourself out of it. So move forward and take action. All that being said, some of this is countered somewhat. And what I mean by that is, yes, deals, opportunities, the process, the pipeline is moving slower. Every single day in each of your economies, there is some government update or some news update which changes the dynamic. And whoever you sell for or sell to, the finance, procurement are really taking and controlling what's being spent right now, more than ever. So therefore, we've got to understand and be accepting that things are going to take longer. So one tip is this: if you're an SDR or an AE and you have a manager, you need to manage expectations up. You need to manage expectations up, and you have to be clear and honest that things are taking longer. Don't let it be a surprise when you're supposed to be forecasting something and it doesn't happen. I hate inaccurate forecasting. It's unacceptable in our business. So if you're going to forecasting, make sure there's truth in it, but be better at managing up and just be honest right now, because this goes up the food chain. If you're bullshitting yourself or others that something's going to happen when it's not good for you, it's not good for your business, and it's definitely not good for your mindset. So make sure you articulate the challenges, and it is going to take longer. There's so many economies whose quarterly reports have not been updated on their GDP. The economies are suffering, and therefore business is slowing. These are facts, and the data points are going to come out. So there's going to be a longer lag, even longer than maybe you expected. You have to get comfortable with that, and you have to be patient that, you might not earn as much commission this year. You might not be as successful as you've been in previous years. That promotion that you were desperate for may not happen. Just live with it. That's surviving. It's not impossible right now to sell, but it is more difficult, and it is going to slow things down. So have patience. And that just leads on nicely to acceptance. You have to accept certain states of affairs, and you have to accept the things you cannot control. I've talked a lot about focusing on what you can control, understanding your why. Why does your product solve a problem for its prospective customer? Thinking about the vision. Who do you want to be in 2021, 2022? What actions are you taking on a daily basis? What actions are you taking now from these nuggets? There's experienced people here. You've invested time to listen. How many takeaways are you going to take away? And then how many are you going to action? Pause and have some patience. We're highly geared as sales professionals to drive, to move forward, to do more, to want more, to have more. You just got to give yourself a little break and a breather and accept that this is going to take some time. And that's the final point, acceptance. So thank you for listening. As I said, my name's James Ski. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, and also check out salesconfidence.com.
James, that was awesome, mate. Thank you for that. One thing, that you mentioned there that resonates quite well with me is somebody asked me a couple of weeks ago, how do you tell the difference, or what's a good sign of when you're interviewing an SDR, if they're going to be a good SDR or not? Like a lot of people can sell themselves well, especially if they're going into a sales role. Is that there's one telltale sign that I've always experienced with SDRs. If they don't take notes in that meeting, in that first interview, they're going to be a poor SDR. And the person said, they don't take notes. What does that mean? I said, if they don't take notes with you, what are they going to be like on the prospects call? And I learned that the hard way myself from starting off as an SDR by not taking notes in one meeting with my managing director at the time. And he tore me a new one. So ever since then, every meeting that I've been doing, I've been taking notes. But I really, a lot of the points that you raised there really, really resonated with me. So thank you for that, James. Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Okay, so with that, we'll go on to our panel discussion. We've got a couple of questions here for all the guys. And I'll start off with Nikki. Nikki, what's the hardest thing that you think sales will have to overcome in the coming months? So let's call it until the end of 2020. What do you think is the hardest thing people have to overcome?
I think the hardest thing that a lot of us will have to overcome is some of the stuff that James was talking about, right? This is such an emotionally and mentally taxing time, especially for salespeople. I mean, you've got folks being laid off en masse, folks who were doing well, who had been in a position where they had to be thinking about what was going to come next in their career. And then you've got employers who are experiencing that same kind of, trepidation. So I think the hardest thing to overcome is, an aversion to risk, an aversion to stepping out on faith and betting on yourself. I think once you overcome that hump, then a lot of these other things become just a little bit easier to implement, especially the things that I'm talking about as far as, putting yourself out there and making connections. I think that those connections are going to be the thing that gets us through, but we've got to overcome that fear of the uncertainty and some of the negative emotions that have happened as a result of this climate before we're going to be able to get there.
That makes sense. Amy, anything that you would add to that?
Yeah, so I completely agree. I think the fear of risk is going to be a big component moving forward, especially in the SMB world. They're going to be trying to hire back employees before they're probably going to open up budget to purchase solutions, or they're going to purchase solutions to replace the bodies that they lost. And that's a cold way of looking at it. But from a strategic business standpoint, that's going to happen. So one of the things that I think is going to be important moving forward in 2020 is selling people on risk aversion as well, right? So it's talking to them about how you are the less risky option than no action. Taking action with you is going to be less of a risk than not taking action with you. So that's going to be a really, really important way to communicate, because that's going to sell the confidence, right? That you're going to actually help boost their business in some way moving forward, as opposed to them plunking down $500K on a solution and, oh man, they're really going to regret that in 6 months. So I think that's going to be huge. And Nikki hit the nail on the head when she, said risk aversion up front. That's going to be the big thing in 2020.
Okay. Have you already started that conversation with a lot of prospects already, Amy?
Yeah. So we have actually one of the customers is a major travel agency, and they saw layoffs within the IT teams, even though the IT teams, are going to be constrained when the uptick in bookings and everything starts taking off again. When people are like, oh, finally, we're free, let's go on vacation. They're going to be absolutely overwhelmed, because in this period, they lost bodies. They lost people to do the actual physical work. So when their volume increases, which it will, now you're going to have less people doing more work. So there is a huge risk there to not bringing in some sort of solution or some sort of consulting engagement or something to help plug those holes that they're now needing to fill. So yes, absolutely. Those conversations are huge. Plus retirement. A lot of people are being forced into taking those early retirements. I mean, if they're a couple years from retiring, they're gonna be asked to leave. My mom is in that situation. I think she's like 5 or 6 years out from retirement, and she knew that if the axe was going to fall, she'd probably be looking at taking an early retirement. Well, who's going to do her work? How do you replace those people? So yeah, risk aversion is going to be huge, and those conversations have already begun for sure.
Okay, that's super interesting. It's creating that value by sharing the risks, right? It's that's very, very interesting. Okay, James, this one's about patience and with senior leadership, because you did mention in your part there just around patience. just thinking of senior leadership, so people in a VP of sales position or head of SDRs or somebody that's in a senior role within a sales or SDR team, what should they do right now? What should they be looking out for when they're speaking with their teams? How should they react to the situation? How do they remain patient? How does it work?
Yeah, that's a great question. So as part of our community in the UK, I pretty much have in my WhatsApp all the sales VPs. And so I'm speaking to them on a daily basis. And, there's a balancing act. On one hand, they have to maintain a level of optimism. They have to protect their team from the executives. And they have to show that there is a way forwards. But I also think they need to be asking questions that they maybe were uncomfortable asking before this, like genuinely asking individuals in their team if they're okay. And not the usual, how are you getting on? And just give me an update on your prospecting. Like, no, I really want to know. I want to put some time aside to understand how you're coping. There's no specific stereotype for a sales professional, but many are outgoing and want to have conversations and want to be outside of the home. And people have not been able to leave their home, at least in the UK, that regularly. And they're certainly not seeing prospects or people physically. And humans, we thrive on that interaction. But I just think they need to be making some more time, more regularly, to ask that question, like, how are you? And find out genuinely. The reality is this is impacting performance. I'm hearing it a lot, that productivity is dropping with certain groups of people. So I also feel like the drumbeat. So, as a leader, you should bring some energy to the floor when you walk into the office. You should be able to infuse and inspire your team. Well, right now, if I'm honest, too many people are sitting down all day, right, and not moving from their seat. And it's clear when you hear their delivery that they're not moving. So as an example, I know there's some VPs that have got very active. So, they're asking in their sales meetups on a daily basis. So they're running meetings more regularly. They're asking their team to stand up on the Zoom call or on the Google Hangout. In our team, we've been doing singing. So, someone chooses a song and we're picking it and we're warming up the vocal cords so that actually we are more active. So I just think it's a balancing act. They need to show a level of care that they haven't shown before and be genuine, but they also need to create the atmosphere and activity to make sure that the level of productivity is not dropping.
Fully agree. I mean, that's that's super interesting that you guys are doing singing on your calls. I think I might bring that in myself. That sounds like a bit of fun. I mean, yeah, it's adverse times at the moment, so there's whatever's keeping people going and keeping people motivated. That's the main thing. Nikki, from your side, just with the focus on SDRs, something that SDR, which is important for any SDRs to continue learning. How much do you see companies at the moment being more patient with SDRs and saying, okay, now really take some time instead of doing like massive amounts of cold prospecting because it may be just reaching closed doors all the time? How important is the learning aspect right now to really, gather more knowledge and really be able to step up to the next level in terms of knowledge? You seeing much of that?
It's absolutely critical. And I am seeing a few folks who are doing things like, teaching their SDRs copywriting, right? Or digging deeper into a lot of the social selling things that I went over in video, because they understand that this is going to be a long game. So the tools that I went over, right? Those are things that they're free to use to be able to play that long game. I want to make sure that I'm clear, because I do speak to and for SDRs. What we're talking about is whereas the day-to-day of that job can very easily fall into this, chasing leads, chasing down prospects and things like that. The approach that I'm advocating for and that I was demonstrating today is one that is intended to attract. So I am seeing a lot of leaders, at the very least, let go of the reins that once constricted their SDR teams from being able to create more content and to try, and not just for the sake of, right? I'm a salesperson too, right? I'm a revenue girl. It's not all giggles, right? It's about, you know, becoming a funnel unto yourself, so to speak, and making sure that what you have out there as content is doing the job of attracting you. And that job has, like most of the sales functions, has just gotten more difficult. So these things might seem, like I said, out of the box, maybe even kooky to some, but what they're definitely doing is getting SDRs in front of people whose inboxes are more crowded than ever, whose LinkedIn Messenger box is likely more crowded than ever, and who desperately are looking for connection right now, and who desperately are looking for anybody to break through the noise. And I think even the leaders understand that. And so I have seen folks internalizing, whereas they hadn't embraced the long game for SDRs before. They are now starting to open their eyes to the fact that that's the necessary step, because, you know, we're in the relationships and awareness economy at this point. And the way to win at that is to A, get that awareness, and B, have your value prop be the thing that drives those relationships.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think at the moment it's there's no sitting on your hands, so to speak. At the moment, you need to be doing something. You need to be reacting, and with that you learn a lot. Like, I've learned a lot in the past 6 to 8 weeks, probably the most that I've done in my career, actually, in terms of, you know, let's just try some things, let's execute and see if it works. If it doesn't work, scrap it quickly, move on to the next thing. Amy, from your side, being at the coalface, so to speak, you know, being in the active outreach to prospects, etc., like, have you learned much in the past maybe 8 weeks? What's worked for you, you know?
So for me, I think it's just been a matter of showing some measure of empathy where it makes sense, right? Because not every customer is in a situation where they need empathy. Like the Bureau of Fiscal, or, you know, anyone handling like government checks or, you know, like they're good. They've got more business and they know what to do with. And, you know, so it's been very interesting for me because I really had to look at every single industry vertical and adjust my content and what I'm speaking on with them based on where they are specifically. So if you sell into just a tremendous number of industry verticals, you're going to have to be really adaptive to every single vertical that you're selling in. I mean, some manufacturing plants and organizations have done phenomenally well in this period of time. They've been able to adapt and they've done well. Others are absolutely crumbling. Just like the travel industry, that's been hit hard, restaurants. But then you've got some organizations that are segueing to, okay, well, we got to go full online, like we're going all in. You know, there's investment in sales opportunities there. You've got all these companies adjusting to having a remote sales force. Well, where's the opportunity there? How do you? And so for me, part of what I've been seeing just on LinkedIn and also with my own customers is figuring out the segue between, okay, in this climate, what can we do to help them? And it may be that you can't. And we have to admit that. We have to admit that we may not be in a situation to help this person from a product or solution standpoint. However, that network potential is massive. If you can establish a strong relationship with that person, they will open doors for you. They will remember that you did pull back when it was necessary, and you did allow them to say no because that was the right thing to do for that customer. And because of that, you've got a valuable network for life. And I've really seen that on LinkedIn kind of take off. And we're doing like the 5 on Friday thing, which has been huge right now because it's totally free for, you know, SDRs and AEs to come on for an hour and just get some advice from other sales execs that are kind of in the weeds with them at the same point in time. But what's been so huge about it is that people have been coming on and literally pitching like, okay, how do we revamp our selling process? You know, you had a company like Capturely come on where their initial plan was to sell to HR departments, you know, headshots for all their employees. Well, HR departments are letting people go in droves right now. They're not going to spend money, you know, to buy pictures from a headshot company. So they had to completely restructure and reformulate their value propositions, who they were selling to and how. And and the hunger that they showed right out the gate to be like, adapt, right? Pivot and let's move forward was awesome. I mean, I was blown away by like, okay, guys, this is where we're at. This is where we need to be. And then 4 people just kind of sat on the other side of the table and just shot like ideas. So I think there's a lot of that needed right now in the sales world. And I've seen those on like, you know, the happy hours and all of that. There's tons of free advice that's been given. And we really need almost more of that in a tangible way, you know, more okay, here's your action items, go and do them. So I think like guys like James, you know, it's so valuable. And like what Nikki's doing with SDRDefenders, it's so valuable right now because there's so many components that you have to nail and get right in order to keep business going. And that is going to be all about how well you adapt. And you know, organizations like that and kind of what they're speaking to are going to make all the difference because they're going to help people adapt and feel more confident in making that change, because change is hard, you know, but we have to change. Sure. We have to change and grow. So
for sure. I mean, we were having the conversation just before we jumped on here around sales confidence and what James is doing. And, you know, one of the main things that James does there at Sales Confidence is run events for salespeople. And James was just telling us beforehand how they've managed to adapt. James, you want to maybe expand on that a little bit just to let the audience know what we were talking about previously?
Sure, yeah. So, you know, one of the things I really care about is relationships and people coming together physically. And that's where you can create amazing experiences. I mean, my background before I was selling, I used to throw parties. So I like a good night and I like to get salespeople together and have a good time. And we've become well known. You know, we bring 200 sales leaders together physically of an evening, and it's unheard of. You know, so when we first heard about this news, I was an optimist. I didn't really believe it. And I kind of felt shock to begin with. You know, a core component of our business is monthly events, and we run an annual conference in July called SaaS Growth, which is our third conference. It's supposed to be 1,000 people physically coming together this year. My whole business plan was built on it, and then suddenly people cannot come together in meetings. I mean, you can imagine it was not enjoyable. And at first I kept saying, yeah, we'll move the date, but then there is that acceptance. And I talked about that in the conversation. I just had to accept. I don't do events anymore physically, at least until 2021. So, you know, we had to then move online. We were already making that transition because we wanted to scale around the world, and we weren't going to pop up evening events all around the world. And, you know, it's hard at first, but we're adaptable, especially salespeople. Like, we are adaptable. I think you just got to remind yourselves that we're good at adapting because we have to work through low and high moods. High when we're winning, overachieving targets, you know, we're swinging it or whatever you want to swing, you feel good. Low, you're on a 0, you're not hitting your lead target, you're not generating pipeline, but you still have to adapt and find a way to win. And doing what it takes, for me, is an underlying attribute for success. And I am someone that does what it takes to win. That's why I've had quite a fast career, but I have an expectation in the team and others that we do it together. So, you know, leaning on other people and finding out what you can do is really important. But yeah, we have been able to adapt, and, you know, we're starting to see the fruits of that come to fruition.
That's excellent, James. I mean, it's so important to be able to just sidestep slightly and be able to still implement, even though things are a little bit different. It's the difference between winning and losing, for sure. We're coming to the end of our time now. We're an hour in almost. We literally only have 1 minute. There was a number of questions in the questions tab, which have been answered throughout the space of this. There's just one question that's still open, is around personalizing emails in a shorter space of time. So the person that wrote us said that they seem to spend a lot of time on each lead in terms of personalizing an email to them. Guys, is there any tips that you can give in terms of tools or something that you've used or something that's worked for you guys? James has his finger up. I see that Amy's unmuted herself. Fight to the death.
I'm just going to say one point is that, you know, you have to have dual mindset. So you have to personalize and humanize in what you do, but you have to robotize, i.e. be robotic in how you do it. You know, the reality is 100 out of 200 of those emails are not going to be read. So you could personalize them all day, and you can do that. So it's a balance, you know, personalize, but do it in a way that you don't get too emotionally attached to this person that you're researching and you're spending 15 minutes on it. You have to be fast.
Yeah, I second that. I think you can over personalize, right? Like sometimes it's like, okay, creepy. We don't need it to be so hyper personalized that it's like, that's getting kind of awkward. And also you can use tools too to help you. Like Cheetah IQ is a new one that's popping up where they analyze everything on that account and that person, like social, webinars, everything. And you can literally do like a keyword search and it'll pop up like, you know, quotes that this person has said on this particular topic. And that's a pretty cool thing to check out. But I'll kick it off to Nikki now. I think she's got some good tips.
One of the best things for me was to, in a sequence, include the research step in my first day, my day one, and only have to do it one time. Go into that process with, you know, specific things that I'm looking to get and set a timer as I'm trying to get them. That's how I have to operate. So I'm setting a 5-minute timer. Let's say I've got a 12 steps, 12 touch sequence. I'm on day one, and on the day one, I'm supposed to send out that personalized email. The step before the personalized email is that research step that I'm giving myself 5 minutes to do. I only have to do it once, and I'm going to find something that moves me that they said that's relevant. I'm going to find something just about them personally. I'm going to find something about their business. Those 3 things I'm going to be using throughout the rest of the sequence to personalize, but I won't be having to do that research every single time. So set a 5-minute timer, make the research your first step, and look for specific things. One of the things that helps that go more quickly is to make sure I'm using the save this post function on LinkedIn, so that when I am doing that and it's someone who I've been thinking about or actively prospecting, I've got a post of theirs that I can go back to, and I can generally find everything I need to personalize versus going out to all of Google. I can generally find everything that I need to personalize within that person's content if they're active, and to make that happen. So set a timer, make the research your first step, and go in with specific items that you're looking to personalize around, and then of course be using a template. For this, I do look to Beck Holland and her Flip the Script series. Join her community on Bravado. That's where there's a library of all of that content, and it's really helped me to get really smart about not just personalizing, but offering relevance and context around why I'm wanting to get in contact with the person.
Yeah, that's really good advice. Thank you for that, Nikki. There was one other question just from Adrienne, and we'll finish on this one around how do you cold email a person who's visited the site but didn't fill out a contact form without sounding creepy? That's basically what we specialize here at Leadfeeder at. So I see that Amy has posted exactly what I would say. I think there's one other area that I could probably add to that is you need to review what the person has been looking at as well. So what type of intent are they showing? So are they on high intent pages on your site? Are they looking at pricing? Are they looking at specific product features? How many pages have they visited? What type of content brought them there? How did they end up there? How long are they spending on the site? All of these types of further intent signals will help you then scope your message, depending on how top of funnel you want to go or how mid funnel you want to go with your content in terms of the outreach. I think what Amy mentioned around, sending something that will add a little bit of value without going too deep into it about, hey, we see that you visit our pricing page. Here's more details on our pricing. Don't do that, obviously. But follow up with something, go have a look at their website, see what some of their struggles might be, knowing your industry or the industry that they're operating in, and target their potential pain points in which you can solve. You know that they're already possibly in a buying cycle. They're looking at people like you. They're probably reviewed your competitors as well. So you need to be looking at to solve a couple of pain points at the same time adding some value. So it's really just giving you a signal in terms of which companies are showing the greatest intent. I wouldn't be reaching out to somebody that's just one company that's looked at one blog post on your website, because they're not showing any real intent. They could have just ended up there just from a simple Google search, and that's it, and they never come back again. So use the how many times they've come, where they've come from, what they're looking at as a good guideline there. So with that, guys, we're after going a little bit over. I'd like to thank you all so much for your time, and really, this was really a great session. There's been some super points that I'm going to be able to take away and implement in our team here at Leadfeeder. And guys, once again, big thank you, and a thank you for everybody for jumping on as well, to the audience.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. It was fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. I had a great time.
Thanks, guys. Take it easy. Bye-bye.